So joining us on the podcast today is the co-founder of the infamous Warehouse Project and Park Life Festival, Sacha. Lord, thanks very much for joining us.
Not a problem. I always think the word infamous is like famous for the wrong reason.
As in, for all, yeah.
Yeah, for all the wrong reasons, like naughty. So I don't know if that's a compliment.
From the famous Warehouse Project and Park Life, yeah. But I mean, let's start with Warehouse Project. All I can say is, wow, biggest year ever. What would you say?
17, yeah. It was certainly up there. So in ticket sales, definitely, it was our most successful year. But you know, it's 17's forgotten now. It's all about 18. Sam's in the office now, booking 18 frantically, and it's looking pretty special. So yeah, you know, the second you finish the season, it's really nice to have a pint on January the 1st when it's January the 2nd when it's done, but then it's over and done with, on to the next. The
lineup, though, I mean, the thing that strikes me about this year's lineup is not just the names on it, but the amount of names on it. Like, it is a mammoth lineup. Like, I mean, and it's caused waves in Ireland as well. Like, people are, you know, it's definitely caused waves across all, like, dance music as well, like, you know.
No, that's good.
Would you say it's one of the biggest lineups you had ever?
Yeah, so every year when Sam's booking it, he has to improve obviously the previous year, and it's harder to improve, but he manages to do it. And, I mean, when the lineups come through now, I don't know how we're making money, to be honest.
That's exactly what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Because there's names on it that almost, like, not get buried, but you forget all the names on it that would normally be like, he's playing, like, I'm going to see him. But because there's so many names, you forget. And he's playing, and he's playing, and he's playing, or she's playing, or whatever it is.
It's the same again this year.
Yeah.
I mean, there are certain nights that are almost like our peacock nights where we're flexing to say, look, bang, this is what we can deliver. And there have been nights where we know, before we go on sale, we know we're going to sell those nights out. But actually, even if we sell out, and even if it's an amazing bar take, and even if people buy loads of T-shirts or whatever, we're still going to lose money. But it's almost like a lost leader. You know, when you go to Sainsbury's sometimes, and there might be a loaf of bread that's cheaper than Tesco and anywhere else. But the idea is that when you buy that loaf of bread, you'll do the rest of your shopping there. So it just puts eyes on the Warehouse Project. But I really fucking hate those nights that lose money.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah, Sam thinks they're cool.
What's cool? Why does he think they're cool? What's cool about it?
Because they are, because everyone's talking about
there's a lot of hype.
This amazing night where all these amazing DJs and amazing artists, and the atmosphere is unbelievable and it's unrivaled, and everyone's having a great time. And I'm stood there thinking, we've just lost 10 grand. You know.
Out of interest, how often does that happen? You know, because you want to put out the best lineups you can.
Yeah, a few times a season that happens.
And obviously it's controlled and planned by you guys.
Yeah, no.
As a punter, you're really spoiled for choice. Like, there's no clashes like Warehouse Project clashes when you're trying to see as many DJs as you can. So it's unreal as a punter to go there. Like,
well, it's actually, there's a formula to the season. So if you look at the 30 dates that we do, or maybe 28 to 32 dates, if you break them down, there's clearly all the different genres. So grime's come through recently. So if you are really die-hard into your grime, there are like 4 nights that are just completely unmissable. The same if you're into techno, completely unmissable, same into house. So it's all sort of, you know, we're not going for the same market week in, week out. And I think that's part of the success why it works.
And do you think there's an emerging music market that you're looking into down the line?
Yeah, it's, no, Sam told me 2 weeks ago, which, you know, Baseline is the one that's knocking on the door now.
That's the one coming through?
Yeah, I don't get it.
Yeah.
I just do not get it. I mean, grime. I was at a dinner party 2 weeks ago, actually, and I find the whole grime thing just very angry. And I get it. I don't like it, but, you know, I do get it. And I was sat next to a guy called Dave Moultrie, who's the CEO of Home in Manchester, who I really respect, actually. And he was saying it's sort of the new modern-day punk, because it's quite political when you listen to the lyrics. And obviously Stormzy at the Brits 2 weeks ago was quite political, the whole Grenfell Tower thing. And it gave him Theresa May a good kicking, which he deserves, by the way. But, you know, I suppose he's right. Perhaps grime is the new Sex Pistols.
Yeah. So, like, you obviously run your nights, they're like underground music and stuff, but what do you listen to? Like, what's your...
You'd hate it.
What are we talking?
You're about to lose half the people that are listening or watching this podcast now.
Is it that bad?
Yeah, so David Bowie, which I think ticks a lot of boxes. Most people like David Bowie.
Yeah.
Prince ticks lots of boxes. Most people are. But then I go deep with the Smiths, Morrissey. That's sort of my favourite thing.
Which is surprising considering you run a rave.
Well, it's not though, because I grew up. I know I look 25, but I am actually old. Why are you laughing? I am actually. I can leave, you know. So I went to school in Manchester, and when I was 17, it's widely publicised. I used to go to the Hacienda and stuff. That's what inspired me. But it was also the period of Manchester when the world was looking at Manchester. So it was the period of the Smiths, New Order, the Happy Mondays, Stone Roses, and that's all anybody ever played. And they were the people who, although it was a different genre of music, they were the people who were inside the Hacienda dancing as well. So Ian Brown was always in there, Sean Ryder was always in there, Morrissey denies he was ever in there. That's bollocks, he was in there. So there was a big scene that was going on at the time, and so it's not surprising. That's what I grew up to.
Yeah. So obviously now we all know the Warehouse Project, or Warehouse Project. Is there a that on the front? There's no. It's just Warehouse Project, right?
I call it the Warehouse Project. Sam says Warehouse Project.
Okay. Either or is acceptable. But so take us back to the start. I mean, it's obviously a mammoth thing now. Everyone knows it, but it came from probably humble beginnings and things like that. Like, how did it come about?
So I had a nightclub in Manchester called Sankey Soap from 2000 to 2006, and I became very disillusioned because it was the same four walls week in, week out, and we had great DJs on, but it became very stale, boring, and my business partner and I at the time, our views and opinions were no longer aligned, so I decided I wanted out, and I sold my shares to him, which he never paid for, but that's another story. But during that period in 2003, we did a warehouse party on Pollard Street, which is now apartments, sadly. And we really enjoyed it because it was very raw, and we actually brought the sound systems in on the back of trucks. And we made so many mistakes. I mean, it was ridiculous. But we had 12,000 people there that had an amazing time. And Sam and I really saw something in that. So when I left Sankey's and Sam followed in 2006, he said, let's do a few warehouse parties, meaning a handful, 4 or 5 tops. And he went and booked 24, and that was the start of Warehouse Project. We actually sold 100,000 tickets that season, in excess of 100,000.
So your first season made a profit? Big profit?
Yeah, it made a profit.
Was your first warehouse product near a prison, wasn't it?
It's right next door to Strangeways Prison, yeah.
And what happened that night? How did it go?
You know the story then. I take it.
It's a loaded question. We're looking for an answer.
Yeah. So everything was great. So it was at Boddington's Brewery, which was fully licensed. All the authorities had been down. All the authorities were very happy with it. So the police, environmental health, the fire departments, all the usual ticks in the boxes like, yeah, crack on. Bit unusual, but I don't think any of them thought it was going to work. And then the opening night we had Public Enemy on, and within 10 minutes my phone was going in my pocket. I thought it was a bit weird, this number continually phoning. I'm like, I'm not doing guest list now, it's the opening night. And after about the 7th or 8th call, I picked it up, and it was the governor from Strangeways Prison. And I was like, right. And then it's like, what are you doing? I was like, well, we're neighbours now for the next 3 months. And it's like, we're fucking not. Because the prisoners literally went off in there raving. And we used to get, Sam and I used to get letters in the office on like a Wednesday morning on Strangeways prison paper to say, I've been on the internet. That was Dave Clark on Saturday night. Have you got a copy of his set? We were like, this is nuts.
That is insane.
And then booking requests and everything.
Yeah, that is environmental health.
Sending in a wish list to Sacha.
Environmental health were all over us like a bad rash that season, because no one realised, but the bass was escaping through the roof. It was just a corrugated roof, so it's escaping there, going straight into the prison cells. Apparently we caused a surge of drugs for those 3 months within the prison. So the authorities said,
Wait,
firstly, turn it down. And then, secondly, you're not doing it there again. So we got in Sam's Mini at the time, Spent months and months driving around Manchester looking for somewhere else, and then we found Store Street, which is actually the largest air raid shelter from World War II. The walls are literally 12 foot thick, so that's why we ended up there, because obviously we can ramp the sound system up as much as we need to.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, you mentioned Store Street, which is a car park, right?
Yeah.
It's a car park during the day. I mean, how did you manage to pull off? Like, you've obviously changed venues a number of times, but none of them are actually
Only 3
venues
times.
as such. So it was what, Boddington's?
Boddington's year 1,
Yeah.
then Store Street 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Then we had
Victoria.
2 really miserable years at Victoria Warehouse.
Why were they miserable?
They were just miserable. There were many reasons, but the main reasons were the fact that it was far too big. It lost its appeal to the customers. It lost the atmosphere. It lost the intensity of Store Street. There were ridiculous one-way systems that were put in there. It was vast, and we didn't lose control, but it wasn't what Warehouse Project was about. So we ran back to Store Street in 2014, and I remember the opening night actually. It was like the family were back again, we were high-fiving. We were so pleased to be back there.
And how do you convince the Manchester City Council to let you run a rave in a car park?
Well, do you know what? They're really forward-thinking, unlike other cities, because when you look at the likes of Birmingham, Liverpool, London, who at the moment are shutting places down for fun, left, right and centre, I think Manchester always realised from the days of perhaps the Hacienda how much attention music can bring on a city, and then you have the ever-expanding economy outside of, say, Store Street, the nighttime economy. So we bring, the money in for the taxis, the hotels, new outfits when you're coming out, restaurants. There's so many different ticks in the boxes that we do. We know with Parklife, for example, when we're on, forget the money that's generated within Heaton Park, but it brings in 9.8 million to the city. So the council really understand and promote nighttime economy in Manchester. Not just us, but across the board.
Yeah. Do you think that, like, a lot of in Ireland we have a big problem with it, where especially in the smaller kind of cities, just kind of smaller promoters and club nights, they just can't survive. There's not enough venues, things like that. Do you think that it's a kind of boat that a lot of councils miss, that, like you say, there is an opportunity for it to be profitable for everybody, as opposed to kind of like shutting them down because of maybe the stigma towards drugs and things like that?
It's nonsense. So the nighttime economy is the 5th biggest employer across all industries in the UK, and I think we employ something like 9.6% of the economy. But a lot of suits that sit behind their mouldy brown desks in the town halls just see it as a bit of fun. If you go into a club, it's a bit of fun. If you go into a restaurant, it's a bit of fun. If you go into the theatre or something like that, it's classed as fun. So we don't treat those things seriously. It should be completely the opposite, because we are creating so many jobs. And I think it's sad. It's great that Manchester see that, but it's sad that in so many other cities I'm seeing these closures. Fabric was the most high-profile example of recent years that I can remember a couple of years ago, and obviously they had a couple of very, very sad tragedies, and the knee-jerk reaction was, right, well, let's close it down. Closing Fabric down was not going to solve the drugs issue. In fact, it would hinder it, because the clubbers would go to other venues that wouldn't have paramedics or wouldn't have such stringent searches or sniffer dogs, or Fabric were very, very, very good operators. And there's always the potential to drive the scene underground as well. Antwerp Mansion is going to close in a couple of weeks. I think by the time this goes out, it'll probably be closed. Yeah. Which is very sad. I don't know what the capacity is now. I think it's like 400, 500, 600 people. They're going to carry on partying. They'll go somewhere else. And it might be that the scene goes underground for a bit to house parties and places like that, which is completely unregulated and unsafe. So, I think it is recognised in Manchester, but other places need to look at it.
And do you ever fear when you open your doors that something wrong could happen tonight? Like, does it ever cross your mind?
Every single night, yeah.
No, how do you deal with that? That must be, because you do it so frequently, and it's over such a long period of time. You've been doing it for 2 decades now. How do you?
Well, we put everything in to mitigate issues. So, I mean, you've been as customers, so you see when you go there, straight away, security will speak to you, make sure you can speak. That's always a good thing when so you're not too paralytic. Then you walk past the dogs, then you'll have a search, and then obviously we have paramedics on standby, we have an ambulance on standby, all the bar staff are trained to look out for things, security walking around the whole time. And we have something called the Loop as well, which is great. The Loop's a charity that we work with, and they act almost like babysitters. So if somebody is not feeling great, but they don't need to be seen by a paramedic, they can just be sat with these workers, voluntary workers, who will sit you down, give you free water, just talk to you. So we're pretty experienced when it comes to things like that. We run a tight ship. Having said that, you can never, you don't know what somebody's done before you come into the venue. Around the corner, you just can't monitor those things.
You'd be, say, quite an advocate for more safe scenarios when it comes to drugs, as opposed to just out and out banning of them, and the policy towards that. How's that kind of shaped your policy within Warehouse and within your events and things like that?
So obviously I don't support drugs, don't condone drugs.
No, of course.
But
yeah.
what I think, what it has taught me to do is not to... Other venues avoid talking about drugs because they automatically think if you're teaching your customers to stay clear of those drugs, or if you're saying to your customers, look, if you're going to do them, make sure you do this, this, this and this. I'm not scared of doing that because I'm not an idiot. It goes on in the Warehouse Project. It goes on in every other dance venue within the country. And if a promoter or a venue owner says it doesn't, well, then they're lying because they know they do. And it's not just dance clubs. It's every club now, and it's every pub now. If you go to the football match at half-time, it's going on, and things are going on in the toilets at half-time. I mean, it amazes me. Even at the greatest club in the world, Manchester United, I've seen it there at half-time. So it's everywhere. So I think you just need to take us on board, and the fact that it is everywhere, teach your customers that, if you hear of something bad, like a bad batch of pills that are going around, and you have a good description that say they're red with a teddy bear on the front of them, let's put it out on social media and let's warn the customers, these things are out, they're bad, avoid them. And it's not just warning my customers, but we have 500,000 people on social media, so we can get that message out to our demographic.
On a different note, if your kids ever said, Sacha or Dad, I want to be a promoter, would you encourage them, or are you tell them to stay clear of that? Well,
A, I don't have kids, okay. But B, if I did have kids, then that's great, isn't it? I mean, it's not a real job, is it? I mean, you don't have to go to 9 to 5, and there are perks that come with it. It's very, very stressful because it's running a business. But you work for yourself, and once you take out all the stressful elements of it, there are cool bits that you don't really get in a 9 to 5 job.
Do you still get that rush when you walk into the full warehouse and the place is rammed?
Well, no, because it's annoying now. Because I get
it's a good problem to have, though. To be fair,
no, it's annoying because now I used to be able to, and I think it's down to social media, but I used to be able to walk through there and look at the lights or stand at the back and look at the stage and stuff, and it's now kind of a fucking selfie.
Yeah.
Can you just leave me alone, please?
Yeah.
Which is not, and I don't mind doing it, but I can't really wander around as much anymore, which I used to love doing.
Is that a sign of how big it's got? Obviously, we know how big it is, but now
I think it's a sign of how annoying I am on Twitter. That's what it is.
Yeah. Fair enough.
Do you engage with people if they throw hate your way on Twitter?
If they troll me,
yeah,
I have to be very. I get trolled so many times.
What's the worst you've ever got?
I get called dickhead, wanker, the C word. I hate the C word. But just every day, people have. I mean, the one thing that really gets on my tits is people, and you must have heard this. People have a go at Warehouse Project and Park Life because they think we monopolise DJs in Manchester. And 95% of people are really cool with us and they love what we're doing and they really support it. Then you get this 5% element that don't really know what they're talking about. And, it's if Sam goes and books Carl Cox, That's great. You know, and Sam pays the money. He's got the relationship over many, many years with Carl Cox's management and Carl Cox. If you pick up the phone now and then try to book Carl Cox, and they'll say, I'm really sorry he's playing for Parklife. Wankers. That's it. They're monopolising the whole of the city. Da-da. And this happens so many times. And, you know, we also suffer from it because there are artists that we can't go and book because other bigger promoters that promote nationally have got those artists. And people just don't get it. But that's one thing that people have going me about. And the other thing as well is ice pops. Don't know where this has come from, but you know, if I ever say something like, it can be, and it gets on my tits. If I say something like, I don't know, I've just been to the cinema. I can't believe it's £10 to go and see a film, which might be cheap, but I don't know how much it is. But I can't believe it's £10. Straight away, bang, you sell ice pops for £2. Fuck off. I'm like,
what do you do? Do you block them, or what do you retaliate, or how do you?
No,
back and ice pop.
What really annoys them is if I just like it, and then that's it.
It annoys them, or
it annoys them? Yeah, it annoys me even more.
Jeez, it sounds like you're constantly berated by trolls on social media.
No, most people are really nice, and people like it when I do something. If I see somebody having a really shitty day or a shitty time, I try to cheer them up. Say, well, you know, come to an event that's like Marco Carola that you couldn't get a ticket for a few weeks ago, and that literally makes their week or makes the day, and it doesn't cost me anything, but I can turn their attitude around just by a simple tweet. I love doing things like that.
And with things like that, like obviously guest list is a big thing. How often do you get asked for guest lists?
Even from people who haven't spoken
from everyone.
My mum gets asked for guest lists. She does. But the thing is, she gives them out. So like Parklife, I'll get a list off of these names here.
Is it in alphabetical order, or is it?
No, it's written. She doesn't really use email on it, so it's like written down. I'm like, I don't recognise, who are these people? This woman here, she does my hair. Well, I've had 2 free haircuts from her for a Parklife ticket.
Yeah.
She does that now, so she starts bartering. Drives me up the wall.
Highest bidder.
Yeah.
Fair play, like she's obviously using it to her advantage.
Yeah, no, she is. Yes.
Just to get by.
The best one I saw was on your Instagram, where you screenshotted a guy who had texted you, and you hadn't spoken to him in years.
Yes.
And he got back to you looking for.
How are you doing? Like, yeah, and I forget who he was, but I went back and I'm great, thanks. How are you and your wife? Yeah, really cool. Can I have a guest list, Paula? Not spoken to him for like 8 years or something. The postman last year, like a month before Parklife, I was reversing out of my drive, and I've got a letterbox at the bottom of the drive, and he was posting something through there. And he stopped me and said, any chance of a guest list for my kids? And I was like, stalling, didn't really know what to say, and he just went, I know where you live. And I was like,
oh,
yeah,
did you give it to him?
Of course I did.
That is weird.
I wasn't having him turning up in my head.
That's a bit intense. That's taking it a bit too far. Like,
you're just drinking tea.
Jesus.
Guest list?
So how do you deal with it? Because if you do turn people down at times, like they probably turn around and go, "Oh, what the hell?" Like,
do. Yeah.
How do you deal with it? You just do it.
You know what? The people who ask me for guest lists aren't really my true friends, because the people who I've said to them, look, if you want guest list, just let me know. They're my real friends. But people that I just blank here. I don't use WhatsApp. I hate WhatsApp because they can tell, can't they, when you've read it?
Yeah.
They're like the 2 blue ticks.
Yeah.
So I avoid it as much as I can.
Yeah.
So yeah, text. You can just swerve a text. They don't know.
What's the bigger celebration for the company, when Warehouse finishes or Parklife finishes? When are you most relieved?
Warehouse.
January
January 2nd. Yeah. Because it's 3 months. So imagine those 3 months. Every single weekend, you don't get to sleep till 4, 5, 6 in the morning. At the weekend, and then on the Monday you're back into the office again. It's like jet lag for 3 months. It's so hard to adapt. The timings, your sleep pattern, very difficult. And then it's the nights get dark and the nights get cold, which is probably why I'm into the Smiths.
And we're in the run-up for Parklife. Are you looking forward to it?
I am actually. I'm looking forward to this one. it's a
Very
big
good
hype
lineup.
this year. There's
Yeah.
big hype. Well, again, that's down to Sam.
Yeah.
But I'm feeling more hype than ever before. And I think we're on the back of a very, very good one last year. It was a good show, very friendly show. The crowd were really up for it. I think last year there was a change in atmosphere because 2 weeks beforehand we had the tragedy with the Ariana Grande gig, and it was the first large public gathering this had happened since then for our demographic of 18 to 23-year-olds. Obviously, it was the One Love, but for the clubbers, this was the first time they'd all come together. So there was like 80,000 people there, and I think you could sort of tell the mums and dads had said, "Look, go, gonna have a great time, but just be careful." So it was a good show.
So when that happened, that incident, were you shitting your togs as a promoter?
Well, I first saw it and I went to sleep.
Because I personally, when I was going up to Manchester, I was like, I wonder how he feels. Like, especially because it's so close to the incident.
Yeah, I mean,
Large gathering like that.
you can never. I don't even think about those cowards, you know, and I will never bow to them. Or, I mean, what happened. He was an idiot. He was a coward. You can call him every name under the sun, but it's not going to change what I'm doing. We'll just go bigger and better.
Do you think that was I think that was the mindset across the city, you know, with that One
It
Love
was the
concert
first-
and with Parklife as well.
Yeah, the first. So I went to sleep when I saw that, and I actually thought a bass pin had blown up or something like that, and it was like an overreaction.
Yeah.
Then I put the news on the next day, and I was like, fuck. And then literally half an hour after, I had a call from head of licensing at Grace Manchester Police, a guy called Ronnie Nielsen, who said to me, listen, it's business as usual, crack on. And that's the attitude in Manchester.
Yeah. I mean, we were both there last year. It was our first year there. But, I mean, I definitely felt that. I felt like it didn't really affect it. You think it would, but at the same time, when you were there and amongst it, it didn't really affect the atmosphere. I if anything, it kind of, as you say, gave that mindset, and it kind of made it a bit, you know,
Special,
yeah, more special.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah,
I
yeah,
think so.
yeah.
So let's see what this year's like.
I mean, I want to sort of take it back, because once upon a time you were a young promoter, and I know it's kind of
Done that. I mean, yeah, it wasn't a million years ago. Once upon a time.
all that, like
Yeah.
all those years ago, you were a young promoter.
Yeah.
It's hard to sort of say. I wouldn't put you in the same bracket as promoters, because with Warehouse and stuff, the scale of it is so big. When we think of a promoter, we think of like, you know, just the young lads, a group of friends putting on parties. But Warehouse is so big now. Do you still consider yourself a promoter? Like,
I
is
am
that
a promoter. I am, and I was the young lad putting on parties. That's how I started putting on student nights in '94, and I think Sam and I live in this bubble sometimes in the office, where, you know, we're surrounded by our key loyal team who've been with us for many, many years. Sometimes we don't really understand how big it is that we're dealing with. Then I was where's it now? Last May I was on holiday, along in the Caribbean actually, and I was wearing an Ants t-shirt. Wasn't thinking anything during the daytime. Obviously, I wouldn't go out at night time wearing an Ants t-shirt.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was just on the beach with this t-shirt, and one of the waiters came over. It was like, oh, right, ants, love ants.
In the Caribbean.
Yeah, do you go? I was like, well, we sort of have them on sometimes at a music event that I do. It's like, oh, what do you do then? I do Wales Project. Wales Project? I was like, you're from the Caribbean, how do you know about Wales Project?
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a few times that you just think,
They must be pinch yourself moments when you go to the Caribbean and someone knows your night. You must sit there and
Where
think.
was this in the Caribbean?
Barbados. Yeah.
Do you sort of sit back and think, how did this all happen?
But it's just a fluke, isn't it? I mean, it's just...
I don't think it's a fluke.
I don't know. Like,
It's a bit of genius. you know?
I don't. Do you really put it down to a fluke? Is honestly?
Honestly, I believe there's a lot of luck. A lot of luck. Being in the right place at the right time, certain things happening. Definitely. I mean, there's a lot of hard... Don't get me wrong, there is an awful, awful lot of hard work and sleepless nights that have gone into it. And it is a complete passion. It's all you think about. But I think there has been a lot of luck involved.
Do you think it's different for a promoter now? Do you think that, like, you've obviously made it into a very successful business? Do you think that's harder nowadays to turn it into a profitable running business?
So weirdly, Sam and I were talking about this last week. I think we came through the ranks where, and I don't sound patronising or don't want to put anyone down, but I think it was harder in our days because we had to get the flyers printed, stand outside the clubs at 2, 3, 4 in the morning, then jump in our cars with the bucket of paste and put the posters up on the walls and stuff. So you won't get to sleep till 6, 7 in the morning in the freezing, pissing rain. And now it's all social media. It's just a lot easier. It's much easier, but I think maybe it made us tougher and more aggressive because we went through that period of time where now it's all to do with algorithms and all that.
Was there as much competition back then?
Oh, it was fierce.
Really?
It was severely fierce.
Was there anyone like operating at such a large scale as you guys were back then? Like, who were your main competitors when you started?
No. I mean, my main competitor on the student nights was a guy called Paul Bennett, who was 10 years older than me. He was a prick. And I don't know what he's doing now.
Why was he a prick?
He's just a dick. Have you
ever run into him since?
No, I don't think he's in Manchester anymore.
Oh, okay.
I'm sort of hoping he's in like a mental home somewhere.
What did he
Sat
do?
in
What's
his own pool of piss. But actually,
that is
so
intense hatred for that guy.
Well, no, I didn't have any money at all.
Yeah.
So I was starting out, and he was 10 years ahead of me. So he had savings, and I used to spend all my money on, say, 200 posters. And I spent all day putting these posters up. He'd send people out just to tear all my posters down.
Really?
So then I'd spend my remaining money on cancel strips. So I'd go out and put them all over his poster. It was like an endless war, constant. That incidentally I won. So yeah.
By the looks of it, yeah. So was there a lot of that? I mean, that wouldn't happen nowadays, would it? Like an almost like a war where you're tarnishing the other nights and stuff like that, or would it?
No, I mean we used to have. Not just me, I'm talking about all promoters that have poster wars, and then the poster gangs used to have wars against each other. So you could pay one poster team X amount of money, put up your big posters, and then the next day they're all down, and you're like, where are my posters? Other rival gangs taking it down. And there was a lot more politics in those days.
That's hard to keep. It's hard to keep up with that.
Yeah.
You know, surely every day you're like, you're putting a poster thinking someone's just going to tear these down, and obviously just takes away from it already.
I remember one summer spending a whole week, and I bought loads of. Do you know what an A0 poster is? The big posters that you see on the streets now. So I bought a load of A0 boards, wood pieces of wood. I drilled 4 holes in them, and I went all the way up Oxford Road, putting up all these boards with tie cables. When I finished it, I drove down to look at my proud work. They'd all come down. How have they come down? I asked somebody. I thought it was the council. It was this one of the poster guys who had a crack addiction. He'd taken them all down, and he said to me, I contacted him, why have you done that? He's like, well, you didn't go through me. It's like, well, I've just spent the whole day. And he went, I need some crack. I'll put them up for you if you give me £50. I was like, if you just phoned me up in the first place and said, look, give me 50 quid or I'll take them down, I would have done that. But you've just wasted your day.
And you did it?
Yeah, did it? Yeah, and he put them all straight back up again. On his crack pipe.
I mean, like, we mentioned, that's ridiculous. We mentioned there, like, you've come through flyering and posters to social media, online. No one hands out flyers anymore. But you've adjusted.
Yes.
Was that tough to do? Were you on the ball?
Do you know what? It happened sort of quite naturally. So we were still doing flyers and posters, and our head of promotions was very keen on just flyers and posters. And then he decided to leave and relocate to Bali, which I don't blame him, by the way. Bali's amazing. But so we brought in a young team of guys who we'd been monitoring anyway in town. They had a really successful night called Drop the Mustard. We brought these 3 guys in, and their outlook was very different. They liked the flyers and the posters, but it was all about social media. And they integrated that into the business. So I actually think that was a turning point. And it just shows that sometimes when you think there's a negative coming in, like this guy who was called Lee, who left, I had a promotion to go to Bali, and we had to readapt. Sometimes it's a good thing to do that, because that's very negative. A positive does come. And then So they're to blame for me being on Twitter and newly Instagram.
And all the trolls having somebody to troll. I'm sure they're.
Going back to park life, who are you most looking forward to see this year? Because it's just an amazing lineup. I don't think there's one like matched in England, to be fair. Even in Europe, like there's just.
Well, no, thank you. I mean, hands down, it's got to be. I'm never really bothered about meeting people, but I like if there's some real standout person, I'd like a photo, and it's got to be Liam Gallagher this year, purely for the Manchester thing. I'm really looking forward to it.
Do you know him?
No, never met him. I've met his brother a couple of times, Noel, who's lovely, by the way. And the first time I met him was at Manchester City when a friend of mine, Mike Pickering, said it was City versus United at the Etihad. United clearly won. And Mike said to me, "Oh, after the game, text me and I'll tell you which box I'm in." So I was like, "Okay," I texted him, and I walked in. He was in Noel's box, and he went, "Noel, this is Sacha from Where's Project." Noel turned around and said, "Right, can I have me a tenner then?" And I thought that was brilliant. So
first thing he said.
First thing he said. So no, he's a nice guy. I've never met Liam, and then Lord as well. I think is amazing. Really do. I'm looking forward to seeing her perform.
So it's quite a vast lineup, and you said that earlier on that in Warehouse Project you have different types of nights and different types of acts. On the subject of riders, does it vary much from like the grime guys to like DJs? Which is like the weirdest rider you ever come across or been handed to?
When I had Sankey's, there was a really weird one at Sankey's actually. He wanted 24 buffalo wings and an oxygen tank. And so I just went to KFC in the end. I couldn't find buffalo wings anywhere, so I went to KFC and just got the hot wings.
And he was happy. Set?
No, he wanted it before his set.
Okay.
It was green velvet, and I still don't know why he wanted an oxygen tank.
An oxygen tank?
Yeah.
I've never heard of that. Was it like with something like that you can breathe it in? Is it like a mouthpiece and everything?
Yeah.
That is bizarre. And was he happy with the hot wings? No complaints?
He never said anything about it, so I'm presuming he was happy, yeah.
yeah. I suppose, like, now that you've come to the pinnacle, we've got Park Life coming up. How far can you go? Like, where do you see it going? And what's the end goal? Like, how can you set an end goal now? You know?
So Park Life now it's reached its capacity, so it will never get bigger. It will always stay in Manchester, so I think where we can improve it possibly is the production side of it, which we are doing this year. We've got some really tasty surprises coming up with new stages. But personally, where we go from here, I don't know. You know, we're always batting ideas around. We were this morning, always looking at things, different options. I mean, certainly it's not going to stop at Warehouse Project Park Life. I've got quite a few years left in me yet, so I want us to. Sam and I both want to do something pretty spectacular.
So you'll be running nights and events up into your 60s and 70s, you think?
No, no. There's a good few years in me yet.
How did you get involved in the foreign festivals?
The foreign ones?
Yeah.
Well, you're referring to Hideout, which we no longer have an involvement with. We sold our shares, actually, last year to a company called Global. But we were approached by some guys from Leeds who asked for advice on it. And, yeah, that was it. We had a good run on that. It's had a good few years. And, obviously, at the moment, we've still got Lost and Found, which is the Annie Mac Festival, which is great. And it's on its best trajectory at the moment for ticket sales. It's looking very good.
Yeah. Well, I'm buzzing to hear what you have coming up, some of those surprises in the future, and I can't thank you enough for coming down to the studio, having a chat with us today.
Apologies for my cold as well.
No, not at all, and also buzzing for Park Life. We're going to be there as well, so you'll see us in the front row. But yeah, thanks a million, and thanks for joining us.
Cheers.
Thank you.